Welcome to the Reinvent Yourself Masterclass. I'm your instructor, Trina Lee, and today we're talking about boundaries. If you want your reinvention to actually stick, not just still inspiring for a short period of time and then slowly fade, boundaries are necessary. I've spent the last 5 years reinventing myself in real, meaningful ways that changed who I am for the better. And those changes didn't disappear. They didn't fade. They didn't go away. The work I put in wasn't wasted. That upgraded version of me is still here today, and I owe that entirely to my boundaries. Your reinvention will require you to go all in. It will require hard work, sacrifice, and consistency. You don't want all that effort to go to waste because you failed to protect what you're building. You don't want to undo your progress and regress into a version of yourself you've already outgrown simply because you didn't have healthy boundaries in place. That's why today's video matters. So today I want to do 3 things. First, I'm going to clearly explain what boundaries actually are because most people misunderstand them. And then second, I'll show you why boundaries are essential when you're reinventing yourself. And then third, I'll walk you through how to create boundaries that actually work in your real life, not just in theory. What boundaries actually are. A boundary is a rule you set around your time, your energy, behavior, and identity in order to protect what matters to you. That's it. Boundaries are not punishments, they're not ultimatums, and they're not about controlling other people. Boundaries are decisions you make about what you will and will not allow in your life. If standards are what you live by, then the boundaries are how you enforce them. If standards define who you want to be, then boundaries make sure your environment, your relationships, and habits don't pull you away from that. When you are reinventing yourself, boundaries act like guardrails. They keep you moving forward when your old habits, environment, relationships try to pull you back. Without boundaries, your reinvention is exposed to everyone and everything. But with boundaries, it's protected. And the more meaningful the change you want in your life, the stronger your boundaries will need to be. Why boundaries matter during reinvention. Reinvention puts you in a very fragile state. You're learning new habits, you're letting go of old identities, you're building something that hasn't fully solidified yet. And at the same time, your old life still has access to you. You're still navigating old expectations, old dynamics and relationships, old habits and experiences, and old versions of you that other people are still comfortable with. If you're not actively paying attention and protecting the hard work you're putting in, those old habits and those expectations and relationships and situations will slowly take you and try to pull you back. That's why boundaries matter so much during this reinvention. They protect you, they protect your energy, and they protect you while you're still learning along the way. Reinvention isn't just about change. It's about protecting that change long enough for it to become who you are. The 3 areas where boundaries are required. When reinventing yourself, boundaries usually need to be set in 3 places: time boundaries, energy boundaries, and identity boundaries. Time boundaries are about how your time is spent, who has access to it, and what actually gets priority in your life. When you are reinventing yourself, your time becomes your most valuable resource. Every habit you're trying to build, every identity shift you're working on needs uninterrupted time to grow. The problem is, most people try to reinvent themselves while letting their time stay completely open and available to everyone else. They say yes too often. They stay reachable all the time. They treat their goals like something they'll get to after everything else is taken care of. When your time is constantly taken away, your growth will be too. You can't build momentum in 10-minute gaps. You can't create consistency when your priorities change every day. And you can't expect real transformation if your time is always being borrowed by other people's needs. Time boundaries are how you decide ahead of time what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Energy boundaries are about what you allow yourself to engage with emotionally and mentally. This includes conversations, environments, people, and even the content you consume. When you are reinventing yourself, your nervous system is already under a lot of pressure. You're doing new things, thinking differently, and breaking old patterns. That takes a lot of energy from you. If you're constantly draining that energy, you'll spend more time recovering than actually doing things. That's why energy boundaries is so important, because you need to recognize what leaves you depleted and distracted and limit your exposure to it. That might look like stepping back from emotionally heavy conversations, reducing time with people who are energy vampires that constantly complain or criticize, limiting content that makes you anxious, angry, jealous, or self-doubting who you are. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about understanding that not everything deserves your emotional investment, especially while you're building something new and trying to reinvent yourself. Because at the end of the day, you can't grow or work on yourself if you're always exhausted. And you can't reinforce a new identity if your energy is constantly being pulled back into old emotional states. Energy boundaries protect your capacity to stay consistent. Identity boundaries are the most important and the most uncomfortable. These are the boundaries that separate who you were from who you're becoming. Identity boundaries are about what you no longer participate in, tolerate, or explain because it belongs to an old version of you. This might mean not engaging in behavior that no longer aligns with your goals, letting go of roles people expect you to play, or stopping yourself from justifying your growth to others. When you reinvent yourself, people will often try to interact with you as if nothing has changed. They'll expect the same availability, the same reactions, and the same version of you. Identity boundaries are how you quietly and consistently reinforce the message of, this is who I am now, which means you no longer have to announce it and you no longer have to explain it. You just need to live by it. So I want you to remember these things. Boundaries are about restriction or control. It's about protecting that version of yourself long enough for it to become permanent. Remember that time boundaries protect your focus, and energy boundaries protect your capacity. And then identity boundaries protect who you're becoming. If you want deeper insight on boundaries and how to actually build them in a way that supports your reinvention, then sign up for my reinvention newsletter. That's where you'll get practical guidance you can apply immediately, real-life examples of what setting boundaries look like in everyday life, and strategies to help you protect your time, energy, and identity as you grow. I share these things that I don't share anywhere else, not on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, only through the newsletter. So make sure that you sign up. The link is in the description box above or in the comment box below. Now that you know what boundaries are, why they are important, and the 3 different types of boundaries, time, energy, and an identity, we are going to use that information and apply it to the training section of this video, where you're going to download the worksheet, and I'm going to help you create your own boundaries that you can apply and practice in your real life so you can have a successful reinvention. Hi you guys, so welcome to the training portion of this video, where I'm going to show you how to go through the worksheet to create your own boundaries. Before you get started, go down into the pinned comment below and click on that link, enter your email address, and then the worksheet will be sent to you. Once you have the worksheet opened, make sure that you create a copy and save it to your Google Drive so you can start working on it. So I have the worksheet opened in front of us. And this worksheet essentially is just going to help you identify the 3 boundaries we talked about, which was your time boundary, your energy boundary, and your identity boundary, and how to protect those boundaries so it can support your reinvention. Because what happens is you can work really hard on yourself. You can put in a lot of effort, but if you don't protect what you're working on, it will disintegrate and disappear. That's why it's so important that when you have boundaries, that you focus your boundaries on your reinvention, the identity that you're building, because you don't want old habits, old mindset, even people or situations and experiences to pull you back. These boundaries that you have in place, they're trying to protect you from stepping into an old version and continue pushing you forward towards your reinvention and creating that new identity. So there are a few sections. We have step 1, which we're going to just identify the reference point
or the version of us that we're trying to protect. And then we have step 2 where we talk about time boundaries, and then step 3 where we talk about energy boundaries. There we go, energy boundaries. And then step 4 where we talk about our identity boundaries. So let's go to step 1 first, where we're going to just create a baseline for ourselves. This is the section where you're going to figure out your reference point, what your boundaries are trying to protect. And you're just going to write down one sentence of the version of yourself you are trying to become and what you're trying to protect. And for me, what I wrote down is the version of myself I am intentionally becoming right now is someone who prioritizes her peace and mental health over comfort and people pleasing. So that is the person I am trying to protect. Based off of that one sentence, I'm going to create my boundaries around that. So once you're done with step 1, you move down to step 2, and we're going to focus on time boundaries. So time boundaries are boundaries that you create to protect your time. And to do that, let's identify where the leak is, where we're wasting our time. You're going to do that by answering the 2 questions below. So the first question is, where is my time currently being overextended or misused? It can be through people, habits, distractions, obligations, experiences, etc. But where is your time being misused or overextended? And for me, when I did this, I realized that a lot of my time was being misused through people calling me to vent, complain, or gossip. That was a huge issue in my life where I had a handful of people calling me to dump their own burdens and grievances onto me. And it wouldn't just be like 30 minutes, it would be like a 3-hour long conversation of people calling to vent and to complain and to gossip about their own problems. And although in the beginning, I was like really happy that I was the person who people could come to. But then I realized also that these people were also just using me because they weren't doing anything beyond complaining, venting, and gossiping. Although it was nice to hear about their problems and to share our stories, at the end of the day, after the conversation was done, they went back and did the same things. And then they would call again the next day or the next week with the same issue. And we would go through this whole cycle over and over again for weeks and then months. And that's where I realized I was wasting my time. I was wasting my time. I needed to focus on me. I had a lot of work and a lot of goals that I wanted for myself. And I couldn't do it because I was giving away 3 hours of my day every single time they called to just focus on them. And so that's when I realized that that was unnecessary. I couldn't do that anymore. And I needed to create a boundary around that. And so that's how you're going to answer these 2 questions. But that's just my example for you guys. After that, you're going to go down to the bottom portion. There's an A section and a B section for step 2. So in the B section, you're going to set your boundary. What is that one thing that you're not going to do anymore? So I have a fill in the blank for you where you're going to answer this. I will no longer blank. And I gave you some examples. Based on my issue I had at that time, I wrote down, I will no longer pick up the phone after 5 p.m. And the reason why I did this is because after 5 o'clock, that was my time to be with my family, time to work on myself, to improve my habits, to work on my goals, to relax. It was not my time to give away to other people who needed to vent and share their life story. And so I stopped doing that. And once I started to enforce that boundary, I got a lot more confident and I started to extend that where like on the weekends, certain time during the weekends, I wouldn't pick up my phone. Then that became a domino effect where I would stop picking up the phone and just start texting people. If they left me a missed call or if they text me, I would text back first just to see how they were doing, ask what they wanted to talk about. And if it became like a laundry list of their problems and issues, then I would decide at that time if it was appropriate to make a phone call or if they need to schedule time in to talk, or if I can simply just write a few words through a text message back to them to help them through whatever they're going through. But once I started doing that, my life got better because I had all this free time back to myself. So that's what you want to do. You want to identify where your time is being mishandled, and then you want to create a boundary around that. And then step 3 is you just want to start doing it right away. Don't wait until you feel ready to do this. You want to, after you do this, start it right away. And if you feel like what you wrote down is too hard and you can't do it right away, then you need to revise it and make it simpler and easier for yourself to be able to do it right away. No excuses here. You have to do something. So if you can't do what you wrote down, if it feels too hard to complete, then revise it right now and do something easier for yourself that you can do right now. So after you're done with the time boundary, you're going to do the energy boundary. And the energy boundary is what takes away your energy. Is it certain conversations, like for me, or is it certain people? Is it certain experiences, situations? Is it content that you're consuming? But I gave you some examples, and you can choose all of them, or you can choose one, or you can even add your own. These were just a few. But after choosing the ones that drain your energy, you want to write down which one impacts you the most right now. And for me, that was having conversations that left me depleted. Then you move down to the next section where you write down, where you're going to identify what you're going to stop doing. So you see the pattern where you identify where you're lacking, and then you're going to identify what you need to do next. And for me, I wrote down that I would stop having emotionally heavy conversations with certain people. I wrote down Amanda. That was just a random name. That's not even a person in my life. But I just wrote down a name because of the example. But I would stop talking to so-and-so because she drained my energy. I would limit my time talking to her or direct our conversation towards something more lighthearted and proactive. Something like that. And then in the second box, you're going to write down what will you do instead now that your energy is being protected. And for me, I wrote down I could use this time to rest, meditate, and read. And after you write that down, you make sure you start doing that right away. So for the last step, you're going to identify your identity boundaries. And in step 4 of step A, you're going to name the old pattern that kept your old identity alive. So I want you to finish the sentence. The old version of me used to blank, even though it no longer aligns with who I'm becoming. I gave you some examples, such as over-explaining her decisions, tolerating behavior she's outgrown, staying available out of guilt, etc. These are just examples. You could use your own. But what I wrote down was I said that the old version of me used to stay available even though it no longer aligned with who I'm becoming. And I want you to remember that as you're writing these responses down, that you make sure that it ties back to step 1, which was the woman that you're trying to become. Make sure that everything ties back to that one sentence. So that's what I wrote down. I identified that the old version of me used to stay available out of guilt. And it's very true. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go down to step B, where you're going to identify what you will no longer do. And I said I would no longer keep myself available just because I feel guilty. This belongs to a version of me that I have outgrown. I also said that instead I would politely decline conversations that drained me and distance myself from people who do not respect my time. And that's it. That's how you create boundaries for your time, your energy, and your identity to support your reinvention. You first identify what you were doing that no longer works, and then identify what you need to do now to support the woman you're becoming. After you're done, you need to make sure that you implement those boundaries and put them in place right after you're done with your worksheet. No ifs, no buts. If it's too hard or you know you won't do it, then you need to go back and revise it and make it even easier and simpler. And if that doesn't work, you need to put a reminder on your calendar, on your phone, set an alarm, so it will remind you that this is what you need to do. And try to do this for the next 7 days. And then after you're done with that, move on to the next video.